So picture this. It is 1934. And you are an incredibly famous, highly influential author. And you've just decided that, well, writing about society's problems just isn't really enough anymore.
Right, you want to actually do something about it.
Exactly. You are going to fix them. So you decide to run for governor of California.
Which is, that's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
And an incredibly public one.
Oh, totally. So, what is your strategy? You're a writer, right? So you do what writers do. You publish a book detailing exactly what you were going to achieve. But, and here's the catch, and honestly, this is one of the wildest historical details I've ever heard.
Okay, lay it on me.
You don't write this book as like a manifesto of your plans. You actually write it in the past tense. You publish a book titled, I, Governor of California, and How I Ended Poverty.
Wait, as if the election had already happened. Like, as if the battle was already won.
Yes, literally. You write about your glorious victory, the sweeping policies you successfully passed, and this whole utopia you created. And the public just goes wild for it.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, the book is an absolute runaway bestseller. You are the talk of the nation. I mean, you are a hero.
There's just one tiny problem with that, though.
Right. The actual election. Because when the votes are tallied, you don't just lose. You are completely crushed. I think you lose by roughly 250,000 votes. The man we are talking about here is Upton Sinclair.
Of course.
Yeah, he wrote the victory speech before he even ran the race. And in doing so, he kind of completely destroyed his own political campaign.
It sounds like this bizarre strategic blunder, but when you actually look at the psychology behind it, it makes perfect, terrifying sense.
How so?
Well, Sinclair fell victim to this biological trick that the human mind plays on itself. By writing that book, he experienced the emotional high, the public validation, and that, profound satisfaction of having saved California.
So without actually doing anything.
Exactly, without having to do the grueling, unglamorous, exhausting political work of actually getting elected.
His brain just couldn't tell the difference between the fantasy he published, the reality he was supposed to be fighting for. It's like he ate dessert before dinner, and by the time the actual work arrived, he was entirely full.
That's a great way to put it. And that invisible force, the one that hands you unearned satisfaction, the one that whispers that you're already a master before you've even begun.
The silent saboteur.
Yes. The one that sabotages your potential from the inside out. That is exactly what we are dissecting today.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. We are so thrilled to have you with us because today we are charting a map into literally the most dangerous territory on Earth, which is your own mind.
It's a fun place to be.
Oh, totally. Our source material today is just brilliant. We are drawing from a highly detailed, comprehensive Urdu and Hindi transcript from the YouTube channel Bookcast.
They do such phenomenal work over there.
They really do. They take these dense philosophical ideas and just break them down for practical application. And today they are unpacking the core philosophies found in Ryan Holiday's book, Ego is the Enemy.
And, the transcript we're working from is just a masterclass in synthesis. It doesn't just summarize the book.
Right.
It pulls these concepts into stark reality. They use examples from history, sports psychology, military strategy, and neuroscience to show exactly how these internal mechanisms operate.
So our mission for you today is a total perspective shift. We want to completely redefine how you view your own ambition. Because when we normally talk about enemies or adversaries, we usually picture something external.
Yeah, like a physical obstacle.
Exactly. You step into a boxing ring, there's a guy with gloves across from you, and you say, okay, that's the threat. It's visible. It's clean.
But the battlefield of personal development and achievement just isn't clean at all.
Yeah.
The adversary isn't external. It's a phantom.
Right.
It is a silent saboteur living inside our own cognitive framework. We're talking about ego today, but we need to be very, very precise about what that word actually means.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this. Because when I hear the word ego, my mind immediately goes to a very specific archetype. I picture the arrogant CEO shouting at people in a boardroom.
Or the athlete showboating after a play.
Exactly. I think a lot of us equate ego with just having a lot of confidence, but the source material makes a hard, sharp distinction between the two, doesn't it?
Oh, a massive distinction. And, blending the two together is really where the danger begins.
Okay, so break that down for us.
According to the text, ego is categorically not healthy self-confidence. Let's look at the actual mechanics of confidence. Healthy confidence is inextricably tethered to reality.
Meaning it's based on facts.
Yes. It is an objective, sober assessment of your actual skills, your historical experience, and, the sweat equity you've actually put into a pursuit.
So, like, if you have spent the last 6 months running 40 miles a week and you step up to the starting line of a marathon believing you can finish it, that's confidence.
Precisely. Because there's a ledger. You have the receipts.
Right. The belief is backed by a physical reality.
Exactly. You aren't hallucinating your ability. Ego, on the other hand, operates completely detached from any ledger. It's this unrealistic, inflated sense of self-importance that requires zero evidence.
Wow.
It's that insidious inner voice whispering, I am inherently better than these people. I already possess the knowledge I need. I am special.
And therefore, the normal rules of gravity and hard work just don't apply to me.
Exactly.
So confidence says, I have done the work, therefore I am capable. Ego says, I am inherently great, therefore I shouldn't have to do the work at all.
It's the gap between earned swagger and unearned entitlement.
That's a huge difference.
And what makes ego so lethal is its adaptability. I mean, it isn't a boss you defeat at the end of a video game. It is a shapeshifter.
So it changes depending on where you are in your life.
Yes, the text outlines that ego attacks us relentlessly across 3 distinct recurring phases of our lives.
Let's lay those out for the listener so they have the map before we really dive in.
Okay, so the first phase is aspiration. This is when you're at the bottom of the mountain looking up, you're starting a new career, writing a new book, launching a business.
The starting line.
Right. And ego attacks here by creating friction against the actual work. It feeds you these delusions of grandeur, making you feel like you deserve the summit without actually having to climb the rocks.
So it makes the foundational work feel sort of beneath you.
Exactly.
Okay, and then let's say you miraculously survive that and actually achieve something. We hit phase 2.
Phase 2 is success. And ironically, this is when the mortality rate of your ambition is the highest.
Wait, really? Why?
Because when you achieve something, ego swoops in to rewrite the history of how you did it. It convinces you that your success was purely a product of your solitary genius.
Oh, wow. So you forget all the help you got.
You completely forget the mentors, the luck, the late nights. You become careless, entitled, and entirely disconnected from reality.
And because gravity exists and markets crash and humans make mistakes, we inevitably arrive at phase 3, which is failure.
Right. And when you fall, ego shifts from a mechanism of entitlement to a mechanism of pure, desperate self-preservation.
It's just trying to survive.
Exactly. In failure, ego's only job is to protect your fragile identity from accountability. It forces you to blame the referee, the economy, your boss, your spouse.
Basically anyone but yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It acts as this impenetrable shield against truth, which basically guarantees that you will learn absolutely nothing from the mistake.
I was trying to visualize this while reading the source material, and I keep coming back to a malfunctioning GPS system in a car.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, imagine you're driving in a new city, right? And your GPS gets infected with a virus that convinces the software that it possesses perfect, infallible knowledge of the entire universe.
A self-aware, narcissistic mapping app. That sounds terrifying.
It is. So what happens? You're driving and the GPS tells you to go straight, but you literally see flashing detour signs right in front of you. You hear a radio report about a bridge being out.
And your passengers are probably freaking out.
Yeah. Right. The passengers in your car are screaming, "Turn left!" I'm looking at a paper map. But what does the ego GPS do? It ignores the signs. It turns off the radio.
Naturally.
It locks the doors so the passengers can't escape. It creates this reality distortion field, ultimately driving you right off a cliff into a river, all while the calm, robotic voice announces you have arrived at your destination.
What's fascinating here is that analogy perfectly highlights the core function of the ego. It is a fortress of self-deception.
Yeah.
Ego's primary directive is to make us immune to reality and totally impervious to criticism.
Which sounds nice in theory until you drive off the cliff.
Exactly. And the tragedy of that fortress is that while it keeps the pain of criticism out, it also locks the doors against the single most vital human trait required for growth.
The willingness to be a student.
Yes. The moment your ego convinces you that you have graduated, that you are a master, you just cease asking questions.
You stop learning entirely.
You do. You begin viewing opposing data points not as, information, but as personal attacks. You isolate yourself in an echo chamber of your own brilliance. Ego is really the ultimate, undeniable enemy of learning.
So let's bring this right down to the ground for you, the listener. I want you to think about a goal you are actively pursuing right now. Maybe it's a fitness goal, maybe you are trying to pivot into a new industry, or maybe you're trying to learn a language.
You're in the aspiration phase.
Exactly. And according to the source material, the very first trap ego sets for you is deeply, uncomfortably counterintuitive. It's about the danger of opening your mouth.
This is where the text really flips modern self-help advice on its head.
Oh, completely. Because we are constantly told that the first step to achieving a goal is to declare it. We are told to manifest it, to speak it into existence, to announce it to our friends and family so they can hold us accountable.
Right. It's the era of vision boards, Facebook announcements, telling everyone at the bar about the screenplay you're going to write.
But the source material, and it draws on actual psychological research here, argues that talking about your goals actively, tangibly destroys your ability to achieve them.
Which feels completely backward.
It really does, because like, if I tell you I'm going to run a marathon, shouldn't the fear of looking like a liar to you motivate me to train?
You would think so. But you are underestimating the biological laziness of the human brain.
Uh-oh.
The text points out that talking and acting actually draw from the exact same pool of mental and emotional resources.
So they're competing for the same fuel.
Precisely. And here's the fatal flaw in our neurology. The brain genuinely struggles to distinguish between the simulation of an achievement and the actual physical achievement itself.
Wait, really? The brain can't tell the difference?
Not emotionally, no. Let's say you sit at a coffee shop with a friend for 2 hours, passionately detailing the plot of the novel you were planning to write. You describe the characters, the twist ending, the cover art.
And my friend is nodding, saying, "Oh, wow, that sounds amazing. I can't wait to read it."
Exactly. And in that moment, your brain releases a massive hit of dopamine. You get the emotional reward, the social validation, and the physiological feeling of accomplishment. Your nervous system literally logs a victory.
But I haven't written a single word.
You haven't written anything.
Wow. You're cashing the check before you've done the labor.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
And because you've already received the psychological reward, you have entirely depleted the vital, aggressive energy required to go home, sit in a quiet room, stare at a blinking cursor, and fight through the sheer misery of early creation.
Oh, right.
The author Stephen Pressfield calls this the resistance. It's that grueling friction and self-doubt that accompanies real work. Talking just bleeds off the pressure you need to push through that resistance.
This brings us right back to Upton Sinclair. I mean, he published the book, he got the applause, he cashed the dopamine check. So when it came time to actually canvass neighborhoods and debate opponents, his psychological tank was just completely empty.
His ego was already full.
Yeah.
And the text brings up a much more modern, painfully relatable example of this. Emily Gold.
Oh, right, the writer.
Yes. She is a writer who landed a massive 6-figure book advance to write a novel. For anyone aspiring to be an author, that is the ultimate dream, right? The runway is completely cleared.
So she locks herself in a cabin and writes a masterpiece, right?
Not exactly. Instead of actually writing the novel, she fell into the trap of performing the identity of a writer.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she spent an entire year blogging, tweeting, and posting on Tumblr about the process of writing. She documented her struggles, her coffee orders, her workspace. She totally convinced herself that she was building a brand and connecting with an audience.
It's the ultimate illusion of progress. I can almost feel the trap she was in. You know, you are typing all day. You are exhausted. You are getting likes, retweets, comments from people saying you are such an inspiring writer.
Your ego is just gorging itself on daily microdoses of external validation.
You feel incredibly productive. But at the end of the year, the manuscript is completely empty. The ego ate the project.
It did. And the text brilliantly contrasts these failures of verbalization with one of the most stunning examples of silent aspiration in modern history, and that is Bo Jackson.
Oh, man. For those who don't follow sports, Bo Jackson is basically a mythological figure. Yeah. He is widely considered one of the greatest natural athletes to ever live. I mean, he played at the highest professional level in both American football and Major League Baseball simultaneously.
Which is just insane.
Truly.
And when Jackson was just a college student, he set this incredibly audacious, almost arrogant goal for himself. He decided that he was going to win the Heisman Trophy, which is the highest award in college football, and that he would be the first overall pick in the NFL draft.
No, if there was ever a goal that a normal person's ego would want to scream from the rooftops, it's that. Like, look at me, look how big my dreams are.
Right. But Jackson implicitly understood the danger of the dopamine lick. The source notes that he told absolutely no one about this goal. Not his coaches, not his teammates, not his parents. He told only one person, and that was his girlfriend. He chose a path of total, silent, relentless work. He refused to let the energy escape through his mouth.
He trapped that pressure inside himself.
Yes, and he channeled it entirely into the physical brutality of his training.
Okay, I have to push back here, though. I love the Bo Jackson story, but we are living in a completely different reality now.
How so?
Well, we live in an era where personal branding isn't just a buzzword. It's practically a requirement for employment.
Right.
Every career counselor, every LinkedIn guru, every social media algorithm demands that we build in public.
Sure.
We're told that if we don't document our journey, we literally don't exist. So I'm looking at my phone right now and wondering, is our entire modern culture of digital validation actively destroying our ability to achieve the things we are branding ourselves for?
That is the exact terrifying tension the source text is trying to expose? Yes. Our modern digital ecosystem is basically a 24/7 all-you-can-eat buffet for the ego. It provides infinite opportunities to feel important, to feel seen, and to feel validated, without ever requiring you to actually do anything of substance.
So it replaces the hard work of being good with the easy work of looking good.
Precisely.
Oh.
The text is arguing that in a world that won't stop shouting, silence is the ultimate strategic advantage.
Silence.
Keeping your goals entirely to yourself forces a profound psychological shift. It forces you to seek your dopamine not from the cheap cheers of an internet crowd, but from the actual tangible, messy progress of the work itself.
So if talking is the wrong way to channel our aspiration, and building a flashy personal brand before we have any actual skills is an ego trap, what is the map? How do we navigate the beginning of our careers without letting ego steer us off a cliff?
To answer that, the text introduces us to a fundamental crossroads. It's a moment of decision that every ambitious person faces, usually early in their career, that will basically dictate whether they become a servant to their ego or a master of their craft.
Okay, I'm listening.
And this framework comes from a man who is arguably one of the most brilliant, yet least known, military strategists of the 20th century. His name was John Boyd.
Let's spend some time on John Boyd because his story is absolutely fascinating.
He really is.
He was an American fighter pilot and military strategist who fundamentally altered how the U.S. military engages in combat. His theories on decision-making cycles directly influenced the design of legendary aircraft like the F-15 and F-16.
They called him 42nd Boyd, didn't they?
Yes, because in simulated dogfights, he had a standing bet that he could defeat any opposing instructor pilot in the country in under 40 seconds. And he never lost.
Never.
Not once. He was an absolute generational genius. Yet, despite essentially rewriting the doctrine of modern warfare, Boyd is largely unknown to the general public. And more importantly, he retired at the rank of colonel, which is a respectable rank, certainly, but it is not a general. He never achieved the massive, shiny titles, the stars on the shoulder, or the immense public prestige that his level of influence would traditionally warrant.
And the text makes it very clear that this wasn't an accident. This was an active, intentional choice.
Interesting.
Yes. Boyd understood the bureaucracy of the Pentagon, and he understood exactly how ego corrupts potential. The source details a specific speech that Boyd used to give to promising junior officers.
The crossroads speech.
Yes. When he saw a young leader who had immense potential, but who was maybe a little too ambitious, a little too focused on their own career trajectory, he would pull them aside.
Set the scene for this. What is he telling these young, ambitious officers?
He would tell them, you are coming to a fork in the road, and you have to make a choice about which direction you're going to walk. You can choose the path to be.
The path of appearing important.
Exactly. Boyd would say, if you go this way, you will get the promotions, you will get the shiny titles, you will be invited to the right parties, and you will become part of the club.
Sounds pretty good so far.
But there is a massive toll to cross that bridge. Boyd explained that to be in the club, you have to compromise your morals. You have to turn a blind eye to inefficiency. You have to nod along with bad ideas so you don't rock the boat. You ultimately commit to serving the system rather than serving the mission.
So you feed your ego, but you starve your soul.
Or, Boyd would continue, you can choose the path to do.
Okay, the alternative.
Right. If you go this way, you focus entirely, obsessively on doing meaningful work. You fight the bureaucracy. You have to stay true to your principles. You actually try to solve problems.
But there's a catch here too, right?
Absolutely. Boyd was brutally honest about the cost of this path. He told them, if you choose to do, you will face opposition. You might be completely ignored. You will likely be passed over for promotions by people who are worse at the job but better at playing the game. You won't get the credit.
To be or to do? to seek the appearance of success, or to seek the reality of impact. I mean, it's a terrifying choice, honestly, because our entire culture celebrates the people who choose to be.
They get all the magazine covers.
They really do. But the source argues that if you have the courage to choose the path of doing, especially early in your career, you have to adopt a very specific tactic. It calls it the canvas strategy.
Yes, and I believe this is one of the most actionable pieces of advice in the entire text. The canvas strategy is really the ultimate antidote to early career entitlement.
Where does it come from?
The text traces this concept back to ancient Rome, specifically to a societal role called the antipendolo.
Which translates roughly to the one who clears the path.
Exactly. In ancient Rome, wealthy, powerful patrons would have an antipendolo walk ahead of them in the streets. This person's entire job was to push through the crowds, clear obstacles, deliver messages, and generally make the powerful person's life as frictionless as possible.
Now, I have to stop you there. If I am listening to this on my commute to work, right, and I have a master's degree and student debt and a lot of ambition, my ego is screaming in my ear right now.
I'm sure it is.
It's saying, you want me to be a path clearer? You want me to fetch coffee and do grunt work for someone else? I didn't go to school for 4 years to be a servant. I should be the one generating ideas. I should be the one in charge.
And that visceral, angry reaction is the exact sound of your ego slamming the door on your own growth.
Wow. Okay.
The canvas strategy flips our modern entitlement completely upside down. Instead of walking into a room demanding immediate respect, authority, and, a seat at the table, the strategy is to intentionally, deliberately become a blank canvas for someone else to paint on.
A blank canvas.
Your sole objective is to find highly successful, brilliant people and figure out how to make them look even more brilliant.
Okay, but sell me on this. Why on earth would I want to surrender my own ideas just to give someone else the credit?
Because of the hidden transaction taking place behind the scenes.
Well,
the text offers a phenomenal historical example for this. Benjamin Franklin. Long before he was a founding father, he was just a teenager, working as an apprentice at his older brother's newspaper in Boston.
And he desperately wanted to write for the paper.
Desperately. But his brother, who was the boss, refused. He didn't want his younger brother getting attention. Now, a normal teenager driven by ego would throw a tantrum. They would quit, they would scream about unfairness, and demand to be recognized.
Which is exactly what most of us would do, but Franklin chose the canvas strategy.
He did. He completely removed his own identity from the equation. He adopted a pseudonym. He actually created the persona of an opinionated, middle-aged widow named Silence Dogood.
That is amazing.
And under the cover of darkness, he started slipping these brilliantly written, highly satirical letters under the door of the print shop.
And these letters just explode, right? Like the entire town of Boston is waiting for the next Silence Dogood letter. They become a massive cultural phenomenon.
Which means his brother's newspaper is selling out. His brother is getting all the public credit, all the societal clout, and all the financial benefit. Franklin is acting as the anti-ambulo. He is clearing the path for his brother's success.
But here's the genius of it. What did Franklin actually get in return?
He gained something infinitely more valuable than a tiny byline in a local paper. By operating in the shadows, Franklin essentially received a master class in public manipulation and media.
Oh, I see.
He learned exactly what resonated with an audience. He honed his comedic timing. He learned the mechanics of publishing. He built a foundational skill set that would eventually make him one of the most influential writers in human history.
I look at the canvas strategy kind of like compound interest. When you act as the canvas, when you are the one doing the tedious research, organizing the data, clearing the path, you are letting your boss or your mentor take the tiny short-term dividend of public credit. They get to stand up at the board meeting and receive a round of applause. And honestly, who cares? Let them have the applause. Because while they are distracted by their own ego getting stroked, you are secretly amassing the massive principle.
Yes.
You are building complex skills. You are observing how high-level decisions are made. You are building insider relationships. You're basically learning the hidden plumbing of the industry that they are too busy taking credit for to even notice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is a brilliant way to frame it. Ego despises the canvas strategy because ego is entirely incapable of delaying gratification. It wants the applause right now.
Exactly.
But by voluntarily absorbing the tedious work, by aggressively giving away the credit, you completely neutralize your ego. And when your brain isn't burning energy, worrying about looking important, its capacity to absorb complex information expands exponentially.
The text gives another example that sports fans will immediately recognize, and that's Bill Belichick. Arguably the greatest defensive mind and head coach in the history of the National Football League. How did he start? I mean, he didn't walk into a facility demanding to be a coordinator just because he thought he was a genius.
Not at all. He volunteered for what was universally considered the most mind-numbing, tedious, exhausting job in the entire building, analyzing game films.
And we have to remember, this was before digital video. We are talking about physically splicing tapes together in a dark room for 20 hours a day.
It was grueling, often unpaid work that all the senior coaches felt was completely beneath them. They just didn't want to do it, so Belichick took it.
And he mastered it.
He did. He became an absolute sponge. He made himself utterly indispensable to the head coaches by handing them brilliant, actionable insights on a silver platter. He didn't threaten their egos. He fed their egos by making them look incredibly prepared.
And in the process of watching thousands of hours of tape, he learned the granular, microscopic mechanics of football at a depth that literally no one else on the planet possessed. Okay, so let's track our progress here on this map. Let's say you've done this. You've suppressed your ego, you've embraced silence, you've chosen the path of doing, you've been the canvas, and the compound interest is finally paying off.
You're leveling up.
Right. You have acquired serious, undeniable skills. You are transitioning from a beginner into an expert. You might logically think, great, I've defeated my ego, I survived the aspiration phase, I'm safe.
And that assumption is exactly how ego sets its most sophisticated trap. As you transition into mastery, the game changes entirely.
The source text hammers home an absolute non-negotiable law for this phase. No matter how successful you get, no matter how much external validation you receive, you must continually, aggressively force yourself to remain a student.
Because the exact moment you believe you have nothing left to learn is the exact moment your cognitive decline begins.
It's the beginning of the end.
Yes.
Yes.
Ego absolutely loves expertise because expertise provides the perfect camouflage for arrogance. It allows the ego to look around and say, I am the master now. I have arrived. The rules of humility no longer apply to me.
To illustrate how to combat this, the text brings up a story that I found incredibly jarring. It's about Kirk Hammett, the lead guitarist for the band Metallica.
This is a great example.
Yeah, and we have to establish the context here. In the 1980s, Metallica wasn't just a successful band. They were rapidly becoming the unquestioned global titans of heavy metal, and Hammett was their lead guitarist. By every societal metric, he had reached the absolute pinnacle of his profession.
He was a millionaire rock star playing stadiums.
Right. 99% of human beings in that position would put their feet up and coast. They would ride the wave of their own mythology, assuming that because millions of people are screaming their name, they must be flawless musicians.
Of course.
But Hammett had a moment of terrifying self-awareness. He realized that while he was incredibly fast and aggressive on the guitar, he actually lacked a deep foundational understanding of music theory.
He didn't really know why the notes he was playing worked together harmonically.
Exactly. He was relying on instinct, not mastery. So after joining Metallica, after achieving massive fame, he actively sought out a legendary guitar teacher named Joe Satriani and asked to take lessons.
And the crucial detail here is that Satriani was not a sycophant. He didn't care about the platinum records or the fame. He was a notoriously brutal, strict, uncompromising teacher.
Right. If Hammett didn't practice his scales, Satriani would literally kick him out of the lesson.
And Hammett submitted to this process.
Right.
He allowed himself to be treated like a beginner. He took these grueling lessons for 2 solid years.
I want the listener to really stop and think about the sheer force of ego suppression required for that. Imagine being a global rock star, walking out of an arena with 50,000 people chanting your name, and the next morning you are sitting in a tiny fluorescent-lit room getting yelled at by a teacher for not doing your homework.
It's hard to even picture.
The source makes a brilliant point here. Hammett actively updated the assessment of his own skills downward. He forced himself to stare at his own inadequacies.
It's a profound level of intentional vulnerability. And to help us systematize this kind of humility, the text introduces the concept from MMA fighter and champion Frank Shamrock.
Oh, I loved this part.
Yeah, Shamrock recognized that ego can easily infect a fighter who starts winning. So he created a formula for continuous ego-free growth that he calls plus, minus, equal.
Plus, minus, equal. I love the simplicity of this. Break down the mechanics of how this works.
Shamrock argues that To truly master any discipline, whether it's martial arts, business, or writing, you need 3 distinct types of people actively present in your life at all times. First, you need a plus.
Okay, what's a plus?
This is a mentor or a teacher who is demonstrably, undeniably better than you. Someone whose skill level forces you to remain humble and who can point out your blind spots.
So that's Joe Satriani for Kirk Hammett.
Exactly. Second, you need a minus. This is a student or an apprentice who possesses lesser skill whom you are actively teaching.
Why is teaching so important?
Because teaching is vital. It forces you to deconstruct and solidify your own foundational knowledge. It prevents you from hoarding information and keeps you connected to the beginner's mind.
I've totally experienced this. Whenever you have to explain a complex concept to someone who has no background in it, you instantly discover the exact locations of the holes in your own understanding.
Yes.
If you can't explain it simply, you don't actually know it. Okay, so we have plus and minus. What is the equal?
The equal is a peer who is at your exact same skill level, whom you can compete against on a daily basis. This is the person who challenges you, who spars with you, who keeps your blade sharp.
Now, I have to push back on the reality of implementing this because it sounds great on paper, but human nature is messy.
Very messy.
Finding a plus who has time for you is hard. Finding a minus who you don't accidentally treat with condescension is hard. But finding an equal, in my experience, finding an equal without that relationship devolving into bitter, toxic, ego-driven jealousy is incredibly difficult.
It's probably the hardest part of the equation.
So how do we engage with an equal without our ego turning them into an enemy?
That is the exact friction Shamrock's system is designed to expose. If your relationship with your equal becomes toxic, that is your diagnostic indicator that your ego has taken control.
Ah, so it's a warning light.
Exactly. The equal isn't there to be defeated. They are there to provide friction. Plus, minus equal is a continuous, self-correcting feedback loop.
Right.
You are always confronted with someone better, which kills arrogance, always responsible for someone worse, which kills selfishness, and always challenged by a peer, which kills complacency. It starves the ego from every possible angle.
It's a structural defense against your own worst instincts. But as we move deeper into this section on mastery, the source text brings up a warning that I found completely jarring. It is a direct assault on perhaps the most universally accepted piece of career advice in modern history.
You're talking about passion.
Yes. The text warns us against the dangers of passion.
This is a crucial semantic and psychological distinction. The text draws a very sharp, very heavy line between passion and purpose, and it argues that passion, when left unchecked, is actually a primary instrument of the ego.
I really struggled with this when I was prepping for this deep dive, because literally every graduation speaker, every self-help guru, every career counselor tells us to follow our passion.
Right. Find your passion, and you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly. The cliche is everywhere. If I'm trying to start a company and I have zero passion for it, I'm going to burn out in a week. How can the source possibly argue that passion is bad? Are they saying this advice is actually a recipe for delusion if it's not anchored to a cold, hard purpose?
The source is arguing exactly that. It defines passion not as dedication, but as erratic, unbridled emotional energy. Think about the physical feeling of passion. It is hot. It is frantic.
Like a sugar rush.
Yeah. Passion is the feeling of being intensely excited about yourself doing a thing. It's the thrill of the narrative you are starring in. And because it is entirely wrapped up in your own internal emotional state, it blinds you to objective reality.
So passion is internally focused. What is purpose then?
Purpose is directed, realistic, and completely dispassionate. Purpose is external. It is about the objective requirements of the task itself, completely divorced from how the task makes you feel.
Dispassionate purpose. That sounds almost cold and robotic.
It is cold. But cold preserves things. Heat burns them out.
Ooh, I like that.
To illustrate this, the text looks at John Wooden, the legendary UCLA college basketball coach. His record is basically untouchable. 10 national championships in 12 years.
Unbelievable run.
Now, if you imagine a coach achieving that level of dominance, you probably picture someone running on pure passion. You picture fiery, emotional locker room speeches, throwing chairs, whipping players into a frenzy.
Like every sports movie ever made. Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday.
Exactly. But in reality, Wooden was famously unnervingly stoic. He was entirely dispassionate. He didn't rely on emotional highs or motivational theater. He relied on a highly disciplined, meticulously detailed system.
What did that look like in practice?
Well, he literally spent the first practice of every season teaching his elite scholarship athletes exactly how to put on their socks and tie their shoes so they wouldn't get blisters. He focused entirely on the cold, objective execution of fundamental mechanics.
Wow. The source calls this the passion paradox. And the more I think about it, the more I see it everywhere.
Where do you see it?
Think about the corporate world. We all know people who are incredibly passionate. They run around the office like a dog, chasing every car. They talk fast, they sweat, they send emails at 2 a.m. They use words like disruption and synergy. They look incredibly busy.
But if you look closely at their actual output.
Exactly. At the end of the quarter, they have achieved absolutely nothing of substance. They generated a lot of heat, but no forward motion.
Because passion is about how you feel while you are working. Purpose is about what the work actually requires to be completed. True purpose systematically removes the I from the equation.
It just looks at the task.
Yes, it looks at the brutal reality of a situation and asks, what is the next necessary action? Regardless of whether that action is exciting, glamorous, or completely boring. Passion wants to be the hero of the movie. Purpose just wants to get the bridge built.
Okay, let's take a breath and trace the map of our journey so far. We have navigated the dangerous waters of the aspiration phase by choosing silence over dopamine, prioritizing doing over talking.
Right.
We bypassed the ego of early career entitlement by utilizing the Canvas strategy and making ourselves invaluable. We embraced mastery by seeking out brutal teachers, utilizing the plus-minus-equal framework, and trading the chaotic fever of passion for the cold, steady engine of purpose.
We've done a lot of work.
We have. So let's say we do all of this perfectly. The compound interest pays out, you make it, you achieve massive, undeniable, world-shifting success. Surely now we can relax. Now we can finally let our guard down, enjoy the fruits of our labor, and let our ego out of the cage for a little bit.
It is the most natural human instinct in the world to think that. And the source material is terrifyingly clear on this point. Absolutely not.
Really?
In fact, phase 2, the success phase, is when ego becomes the most lethal, the most insidious, and the most difficult to detect.
It's the danger of early pride. The text illustrates this with another story about our friend Benjamin Franklin.
Ah, yes.
So he is a little older now. He's 18. He's had a tiny microscopic bit of success down in Philadelphia, and he travels back to his hometown of Boston, and he is feeling himself.
Oh, yeah.
He's wearing a brand new expensive suit. He's got a fancy pocket watch. He is strutting around town, actively making sure everyone sees how well he is doing.
He is completely infected with the disease the text calls beginner's conceit.
Right. And he goes to visit a highly prominent figure, Cotton Mather. They are walking down a narrow hallway, chatting, and Franklin is walking with his nose literally in the air. Suddenly, Mather yells out, "Stoop! Stoop!"
But Franklin is too absorbed in his own pride to listen.
Exactly. And he walks headfirst, full speed, into a low wooden crossbeam. Thump.
And as Franklin is rubbing his bruised head, Mather delivers a piece of advice that Franklin later admitted he remembered for the rest of his life.
What did he say?
Mather looked at him and said, "Stoop, young man. Stoop as you go through this world and you'll miss many hard thumps."
It is the absolute perfect physical manifestation of how ego operates. When you are puffed up with pride, when your chin is in the air because you think you're untouchable, you literally lose your situational awareness.
You cannot see the structural obstacles that are right in front of your face.
Because early success fundamentally distorts our reality. It creates a powerful, intoxicating narrative that we are chosen. It tells us that our success wasn't the result of timing, luck, and grueling work, but rather that it was the inevitable manifestation of our inherent genius.
To combat this, the text highlights the extreme, almost paranoid measures taken by John D. Rockefeller.
One of the wealthiest, most powerful human beings in modern history.
Yes. And despite possessing wealth that is almost unfathomable and power that could rival governments, Rockefeller was deeply, existentially terrified of his own ego.
Why was he so scared of it?
Because he knew it could ruin him. The source notes a specific practice he maintained throughout his life: nightly self-audits.
What does that actually look like?
He would sit completely alone in his room at night, and he would speak aloud to himself. He would essentially interrogate his own soul. He would say things like, "Because you have got to start, you think you are quite a merchant? Look out, or you will lose your head, go steady."
Wow, he was talking himself down?
He actively reminded himself that a booming oil market didn't make him a god, and that a run of good luck didn't make him infallible. He acted as his own brutal teacher, his own Minos, because at his level of success, there was literally no one left above him with the power to tell him no.
He had to artificially construct friction to keep his ego from consuming him.
Yeah.
But what happens if you don't possess Rockefeller's discipline? What happens if you just let the success go to your head and you start believing your own press clippings?
Well, the source details two terrifying endpoints of unchecked ego in the success phase: living in imagination and paranoia.
Let's start with living in imagination, because when you become highly successful, the stakes get incredibly high, and ego, above all else, hates to lose. So to protect itself from the possibility of failure, ego will sometimes retreat entirely into a fantasy world.
The text uses General George McClellan during the American Civil War as the prime historical example of this pathology.
McClellan is a fascinating case study. He was given command of the Union Army, and by all accounts, he was brilliant on paper. He was a master of logistics, fantastic at outfitting and training troops, and he was universally beloved by his men because he took such good care of them.
But he had a fatal overriding flaw.
Yes, he did.
He lived entirely within a mental fantasy of perfect battles. His ego could not handle the messy, chaotic, bloody, and potentially humiliating reality of actual combat. So to avoid engaging, he constantly hallucinated obstacles.
He literally convinced himself, despite all empirical intelligence reports to the contrary, that the Confederate Army vastly outnumbered him.
By massive margins. He would write to the president claiming the enemy had 150,000 troops when they barely had 50,000.
Unbelievable.
By creating this fictional, overwhelmingly powerful enemy in his mind, McClellan handed his ego the perfect, justifiable excuse for inaction. He would wait and wait for the perfect battle plan, the perfect weather, the perfect numerical advantage. He essentially paralyzed the entire Union Army.
He preferred to fight and win imaginary, bloodless battles in his tent, where his genius was unquestioned, rather than risk losing a real messy battle out in the mud.
It's tragic, really.
It is. And we laugh at McClellan, but I want the listener to really internalize this. How many times have you delayed launching a website, or delayed sending an email to a recruiter, or delayed publishing an article because you hallucinated an army of vicious critics who don't actually exist? Your ego is protecting your reputation at the expense of your actual mission.
That is exactly how the pathology manifests today. And it ties directly into a psychological concept mentioned in the text developed by David Elkind, the imaginary audience.
This blew my mind. Explain the imaginary audience.
It is a psychological phenomenon where an individual feels as though everyone around them is constantly watching, scrutinizing, and judging their every move.
So you feel like you're on stage all the time.
Exactly. It is very common during adolescence as the brain develops self-awareness. But for highly successful people who fail to check their ego, this becomes a permanent, deeply destructive state of mind. They believe the spotlight of the universe is permanently fixed on them.
I liken it to walking around with your own personal mental paparazzi. You are constantly posing. You are making decisions not based on what is objectively effective or what serves the business, but entirely on how it will look to this fake crowd in your head.
You perform for the imaginary audience instead of engaging with the real, flawed, messy people right in front of you.
And when you live for the imaginary audience, you eventually reach the second endpoint of unchecked success: paranoia.
The text brings up Howard Hughes and Arthur Lee as examples here.
Yes. When you believe you are the absolute center of the universe and you believe that your success is solely dependent on your own flawless judgment, a dark shift occurs.
You begin to view everyone else as either hopelessly incompetent or actively malicious.
Right. Ego creates a fortress, but a fortress is also a prison. Howard Hughes is the ultimate tragic example of this.
He started as a brilliant, daring aviator and billionaire.
But his unchecked ego morphed into a desperate, obsessive need for total control. He ended his life as a complete recluse, destroyed by paranoia, unable to trust a single human being. His ego demanded total control, and in return, it took his sanity.
It breeds a profound, toxic sense of entitlement. We start demanding that reality bend to our will. We stop doing the humble, gritty, unglamorous work, the canvas strategy work that actually got us to the top in the first place.
We expect continued success to just be handed to us simply because of who we are.
And that entitlement is the exact mechanism that sets us up for the final inevitable plunge.
Because life is cyclical. The universe does not care about your ego. Eventually, the applause stops, the market crashes, you get fired, you make a massive public mistake. Or, worst of all, you face immense, completely unfair pushback. The floor falls out and you hit rock bottom.
This brings us to the final phase of our map, the failure phase.
And how we respond to failure is the ultimate defining test of our battle against ego. When we fall, The text outlines two very different psychological responses: restraint and denial.
Let's talk about restraint first, because the historical example used in the text is one of the most powerful stories of human endurance I have ever heard. We are talking about Jackie Robinson.
For those listening around the world who might not know the history, Jackie Robinson was the man chosen by executive branch Rickey to break the racial color barrier in Major League Baseball in 1947.
It is a story of almost unimaginable psychological pressure.
Truly.
When Branch Rickey was searching for the player to integrate the league, he didn't just need a phenomenal athlete. There were many incredibly talented black players in the Negro Leagues. Rickey was hunting for a player who possessed a very specific, almost superhuman psychological trait.
He needed someone with the immense, unfathomable courage not to fight back.
Exactly. Rickey knew the reality of the America they were operating in. He knew that whoever broke that barrier would face a horrific, sustained campaign of abuse. There would be physical violence, there would be death threats against the player and his family, there would be tens of thousands of people screaming vile racial slurs every time he stepped onto the field.
And Rickey knew that if the player reacted naturally, if he threw a punch, if he lost his temper, if he gave them any excuse, the racist establishment would immediately use it as proof that integration was dangerous and couldn't work. The experiment would fail, and the door would be slammed shut for a generation.
The source material is very explicit about what Robinson endured. Opposing players intentionally spiking him with sharp cleats, pitchers deliberately throwing fastballs at his head, hotels refusing to let him sleep in the same building as his teammates.
Now, Jackie Robinson was not naturally a passive, submissive guy. He was a proud, fiery, elite competitor. He had previously been court-martialed in the military for refusing to move to the back of a segregated bus.
Wow.
His natural human ego, his intrinsic sense of dignity, must have been screaming at him every single inning to retaliate, to defend his honor.
But he didn't. He exhibited the ultimate agonizing power of restraint. He voluntarily sacrificed his natural human ego. He sacrificed his desire for immediate personal justice and vindication, and he subordinated it to a much larger monumental mission, the advancement of civil rights.
He absorbed the abuse, locked it away, and channeled every ounce of his energy into playing brilliant, undeniable baseball. He let his performance, his batting average, his stolen bases be his only response.
That's incredible.
But I want to pause here and really dig into this, because this is where a lot of people struggle with these philosophies. How do we navigate this in our own lives? I want to push back. How do we know the difference between enduring unfairness strategically, the way Jackie Robinson did, and just being a doormat who lets people walk all over them?
That is the crucial defining distinction. Strategic restraint is entirely inextricably dependent on knowing your ultimate why.
Your why.
Yes. You must have a clearly defined purpose that sits above your ego. Robinson knew exactly what his larger purpose was, and he knew with absolute certainty that retaliation would destroy that purpose. Enduring abuse without a larger purpose is just suffering. It is victimhood.
Right.
Enduring abuse for a larger purpose while maintaining your internal compass is profound discipline.
So the ego reacts to failure or abuse by taking it personally.
Yes, the clinical term in psychology is narcissistic injury. When something bad happens, the ego immediately centers itself. It says, how dare they treat me this way? Don't they know who I am?
True resilience requires you to surgically separate your core character from the external outcome or from the vicious actions of others. It requires knowing that their horrific behavior is a reflection of their broken character, not yours.
Which leads us to the concept of hitting absolute rock bottom. The text uses a Greek word for this experience, katabasis.
Katabasis, which translates to a descent into the underworld.
It's the Fight Club moment. In the movie Fight Club, the protagonist's apartment violently blows up, destroying his perfect IKEA furniture and his carefully curated life, forcing him to start over from absolute nothingness.
That's a great comparison.
Katabasis is that moment of total ruin. You are fired. You are bankrupt. You are publicly disgraced. It is incredibly, deeply painful. But the source text argues that katabasis is also a tremendous, necessary opportunity.
Why? Because it shatters the shell.
Precisely. For years, your ego has been building a hard, protective shell of self-deception, excuses, and entitlement around your mind. Rock bottom is the only impact hard enough to shatter that shell.
It's the only thing that breaks it.
When you have lost everything, your job, your reputation, your money, you can no longer pretend. The GPS is broken. The imaginary audience has left the theater. You are forced, perhaps for the first time in your life, to look at the unvarnished, brutal truth of who you are, what you lack, and the exact mistakes you've made.
It is the only foundation from which genuine, reality-based rebuilding can occur.
But not everyone takes that opportunity.
No, they don't. Not everyone lets the shell shatter. And this brings us to the dark alternative, denial. The text contrasts Jackie Robinson's restraint and the humble acceptance of rock bottom with the catastrophic story of Lance Armstrong.
Lance Armstrong is the textbook clinical example of what the source calls threatened egotism.
Explain that.
Armstrong had built one of the most powerful, lucrative mythologies in modern history. He was the heroic cancer survivor who miraculously won 7 Tour de France titles clean. When the massive systemic doping scheme was finally exposed, his ego was faced with total existential annihilation. The image he had constructed was proven to be a lie.
So he was standing at the edge of the underworld. He was facing catabasis. All he had to do was descend, admit the truth, and let the shell shatter.
But he refused. Instead of experiencing the necessary pain of rock bottom and owning his truth, his ego went into absolute overdrive. It activated a scorched earth defense protocol.
He reacted with terrifying, malicious aggression.
He didn't just deny the doping allegations. He actively, systematically tried to destroy the lives, careers, and mental health of the people who were telling the truth.
He sued journalists into bankruptcy. He ruined former friends and teammates. He used his immense wealth and power to protect his ego's false narrative at the expense of reality, morality, and human decency.
He refused to let his own shell shatter, so he decided to shatter the lives of everyone around him instead.
It's the ultimate tragedy of the ego in failure. It prevents redemption because it categorically prevents accountability. If you can never admit you were wrong, you can never begin the process of becoming right.
The section on failure closes with a philosophical anchor from Goethe, which beautifully synthesizes the anti-ego approach to both monumental success and crushing failure.
What did Goethe say?
Goethe essentially said that as a human being, your only true goal, your only actual responsibility is to do the right thing in the present moment. Whether the right outcome happens, whether you are praised or punished, whether you win the gold medal or get disqualified, whether the company goes public or goes bankrupt, is ultimately none of your business.
You control the action. You do not control the fruit of the action. If you attach your identity to the outcome, you are forever a slave to your ego. If you fail, you are destroyed. If you succeed, you are corrupted. But if you attach your identity entirely to the integrity of your effort, you are free.
Exactly. It is the ultimate liberation from the imaginary audience.
Wow. Okay. We have covered an immense amount of psychological ground today, pulling from a truly rich, dense source text. Let's take a moment to recap the 3 vital, actionable lessons we've extracted about defeating our silent saboteur.
First, in the aspiration phase, we must aggressively check our ego at the door. We have to understand the biological danger of verbalization. We must prioritize silent doing over public talking. We must embrace the Canvas strategy, actively seeking out the tedious work that clears the path for others, delaying gratification to build undeniable skills.
Second, during the success phase, we must remain vigilant against the entitlement and the paranoia that early victories inevitably breed. We have to remain humble, dedicated students. We must intentionally update our self-assessment downward, seek out strict teachers, implement the plus-minus-equal framework, and anchor ourselves to a cold, dispassionate purpose rather than erratic, ego-driven passion.
And third, in the failure phase, we must maintain our dignity and tether ourselves to objective truth. When we are treated unfairly or when we hit rock bottom, we cannot let narcissistic injury turn us into vindictive tyrants or delusional victims. We must embrace the catabasis, let the false ego shatter, and focus purely on executing the right action regardless of the external outcome.
So what does this all mean for you? We've talked extensively today about how ego uses time as a weapon. It uses your past victories, your past grievances, the times you were wronged, to puff you up or make you bitter. And we've talked about how it uses the future, your imagined success, your mental paparazzi, your fear of failure, to paralyze you and distract you from the work.
Right.
But if the ego thrives entirely on the fictional stories we tell ourselves about our past and our future, what if the ultimate absolute weapon against it is simply extreme presence?
Extreme presence.
Think about it. What if being so completely, intensely, aggressively absorbed in the exact mundane physical task you are doing right this very second, whether that is writing a sentence, writing a line of code, or tying your shoes like John Wooden's players? What if that intense presence leaves literally no room in your brain for the concept of you to even exist?
That's a powerful thought.
Think about that. We'll see you next time.